There we go. So I was having trouble getting that scene changed. Everybody, welcome to the Dev Talk Show here on August 1st. Believe it or not, it is August 1st. I can't believe it because I am still of the opinion that 2025 is the new year. So that's crazy. But yet here we are on the Dev Talk Show. Rich will be here in just a moment. I actually had some technical difficulties right after starting the stream. The craziest thing happened to me. I started the stream and then immediately, because we happen to use StreamYard for this, immediately my browser just stopped working. And so I was out and Rich said, hey, get the show started because we definitely have an exciting topic that we'd like to make sure we have plenty of time for today. And that is something that's been like, it's been difficult for us. I think it's difficult for a lot of people that have caught our shows. And in some respects, I think it is the reason some people found the show to begin with. And it is authentication and authorization, specifically with Blazor. But I would argue that really it's authentication authorization related to ASP.NET users in general, because the principles that we talk about could be applied to a Razor Pages application, an MVC application. I think those are other interesting topics to tackle as well, to say like, hey, how do we do the same thing with these other frameworks? So we're not going to dodge too long to get started here. Today, specifically, I want to level set this for somebody that maybe you're a show regular, you've seen the show title, and you wonder, what is this exactly? We have another show in our backlog. Well, I'm going to have to get the link and put it into the show notes so that when you watch on YouTube, you can go find it. Where last year we did a show specifically using the Blazor Web App template, which is not the same template and pattern we're using now. The Blazor Web App template was referred to for a while as Blazor United. It is the current Blazor Web project that just about everyone doing tutorials and talks concentrates on. And this is the tutorial that has a server project, and optionally it might have a client project. And the reference that I love from Dan Roth on the ASP.NET Core team is when he talks about your components being islands of interactivity. But generally speaking, this is everything about render modes. And so if you are coming with that expertise, then we did cover logging in with external accounts with an Entra ID account on a previous show. And that was specifically to solve a problem that I think a lot of people might have, which is I want to use this stuff, but I want to use it on a project at work. And at work, we have a directory, and I just don't know how to sign in people into that directory, to sign them into their own Entra ID, right? So this show, the reason this came about is because on this show, we have been working on a project to kind of have a user group management app that we intend to use for Philly.net going forward. And at some point, we need to be able to log people in. Why? There's two main reasons. We want to identify the user that's coming, not in a way that's too intrusive, just like you're showing up. When you come back, you're probably going to want us to know that you're the same person. And we're going to start that by supporting personal Microsoft accounts. These are the accounts that you might use to connect to Outlook.com or previously, maybe you still use your Hotmail account, right? Or what if you are an Xbox user and you sign in to Xbox with that? This is your personal Microsoft account, which can be confusing because a lot of us, knowingly or not, also have Microsoft accounts that are organizational, meaning that you have created a username and password to log into a specific organization. This could be at work. This could be what you use to get into SharePoint at work, or even just other applications around the office. Or you may have joined an organization without even realizing it, of a nonprofit group or something that is using, that they have some kind of tenant or organization set up. There's all kinds of ways to do it. This is for personal accounts. So step one, and today what we're going to do is we're going to file a new project and show how there's actually some built-in support in Visual Studio to get this going. But we're not going to stop there. We're going to see, if we don't get to it this show, we will definitely now need to be adding this to our current application. And our current application, the application is already there. It's already up and running. So can we add this to it after the fact, which is what most of us are going to want to do. So let's get moving pretty quick. I think Rich is trying to get back in here. He may be having some computer issues. It's just crazy that we both hit the live button, and we hit the live button, and then immediately in the middle of it, the browser just stopped, and I came back in. I don't know if maybe Rich had the same computer trouble. So I'm not 100% sure what the issue is, but he's definitely trying to get back in here. So let me go ahead and we're going to share a screen, and we have this view, which is one of the widest views that we can have on StreamYard in terms of the full screen. So what can we do here? It turns out in .NET 9, there are project templates for Blazor WebAssembly Standalone. When I say .NET 9, let me try to clarify what I think I really mean here. So this is Visual Studio 2022, which has support for .NET 9 among some previous .NETs as well. I think, yeah, because 8 is still supported. So I think you can use 8 and 9 in support here in Visual Studio 2022. And we already have a Blazor standalone web application, but I want to start, the first thing I want to try and do is say, what if I came at this with File New Project? Now, I'm going to go ahead and be a little intentional about this and say, okay, Blazor, what if I just search for Blazor? If I just search for Blazor in these project templates, these are the choices that you generally come up with. Blazor Web App, right? Now, Blazor Web App is the modern Blazor template that premiered in .NET 8. And this is the template that supports render. It has the concept, the first class, like really powerful concept of render modes, server-side rendering, stream rendering is in here, and then client interactivity is or can be component by component, so that therefore you could have this server-side rendered application that just has this island of interactivity. And again, I'm going to make sure that I credit Dan Roth with that term because I think it describes it really well, that either uses Blazor Server, what we traditionally thought of as Blazor Server, the SignalR connectivity, or uses Blazor WebAssembly downloaded to your app, or with the interactive auto rendering mode, tries to support both by getting you going with server and then downloading the WASM version for next time, stuff like that. Blazor Server App is actually the older way where you made the choice. You said, I am a Blazor server application, and everything's going to be done over a SignalR connection. This is what Blazor was for .NET 7, .NET 6, .NET 5, and previously. There's also Blazor WebAssembly app, but the one that we focused on was what's called Blazor WebAssembly Standalone. And the Blazor WebAssembly Standalone is a project template that when it pops out, you get a Blazor WebAssembly app that could be, to differentiate it from the others, it is a SPA. That's what it really is. It's a single page application style application that you can take and host on a static website provider. Like you could use a provider, like for example, Azure Static Web Apps. We have taken it on a show and just threw the code as is into GitHub and turned on GitHub pages, and the app worked. So this is that SPA feel that a lot of folks who maybe are used to like a React style world, that this is more like that. So I'm going to pick that Blazor WebAssembly standalone template, and we're going to delete these later. This is not our current project, and let me go ahead and call this Blazor WASM app MS identity just to identify it. It's a Blazor WebAssembly standalone app using MS identity. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's go to the next button, and we get these choices here. We're going to be in .NET 9, but authentication type, you get 2 choices in this project template. You get individual accounts and Microsoft Identity Platform. We're going to pick Microsoft Identity Platform just solely because this version walks you through linking it. It optionally walks you through linking it to an app registration. To sign in Microsoft accounts, even personal accounts, you will still need an Azure subscription, and you basically use the Entra ID and app registration. What do you use Entra ID? I don't think you really need Entra ID here. You use the app registrations part of the portal, or you can do this. You know, I love to figure out the AZ commands to not have to use the portal. So that way it can be part of an automated deployment and an automated setup. That's why. But this particular process is going to say, hey, you are going to need the .NET MS Identity tool. So what is the .NET MS Identity tool? Well, let's show everybody. So here is PowerShell, right? And PowerShell's it's just a choice. You can use anything you want. You could be doing this in Linux. It works fine. So we know .NET. We know the .NET CLI, and I just did help on it just so we could see it run. .NET has this concept of tools, where you can basically add tool. If you're using EF Core, you've already installed the EF Core tool probably. You may not even know it. And here it is, the .NET tool. Let me see if list is what I want. It probably wasn't list. So at least it's not -- list. If I say .NET tool list, it's going to tell me, yeah, you have a couple tools installed. You have Microsoft .NET -MS Identity, which means that, yes, I did previously use the command that I think it was, I used .NET install, and I said .NET, Microsoft .NET -MS Identity. So I have already done that. I have already done .NET install to add that package in. What happens is this template and Visual Studio is going to end up using it for us. So I'm going to click next, and you need to be logged into your Microsoft account connected to an Azure subscription, so that way it'll bring up your tenant, and it'll bring up the applications that you own, the app registrations you already own. Don't worry, I'm going to show you how to create this app registration in a second. But what I want you to see is off screen, it's asking me to sign into Azure, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to keep that off screen. But now that it's done that, I have some app registrations already in my Azure tenant. The one that I want that's already set up is Blazor WASM personal MSA only. But I'm going to go ahead and take a step here and go to the portal just to show you what that looks like. So let me, I made that sound super easy, right? So here we go. Let's get to the portal here. And people who watch this show know that my infamous saying, friends don't let friends use the portal. What I really mean by that is that using the portal is a great way to learn how to do something, how to get things started. Okay. But then I personally like to figure out an automated way to do the exact same things that I did in the portal. That could be using just something as simple as the AZ CLI. It could also be using Bicep. It could be using Terraform. So really, it's not important to me how to automate it. Like, that doesn't matter to me, what tool that you like or I like. What matters to me is that I don't have to go to the portal to do this, because otherwise it becomes like this human interaction that is going to be very hard to hand off to your DevOps team. Heck, if you're a smaller team, a smaller company, you might be the DevOps team, right? So you want everything automated and repeatable. So under app registrations, you can see I already have some app registrations. I'm going to create a new registration just to show through this. And we're not, maybe we will use this because that way I can struggle through probably forgetting something that I need. But this is going to be Blazor WASM Standalone. And you don't have to name it this way. Personal MSAs. I only name things this way. Maybe Maybe I'll make that a little bigger so we can see. I'm only naming things this way so I can remember. Oh, I did this for the show, TDTS, the Dev Talk Show, and I was demonstrating Blazor WASM standalone with personal MSAs. That way I can go delete it later and not feel bad about it. When you create an app registration that can be used to log in and manage folks in Entra ID, you get this choice here. Do you want them to be able to log into your tenant? And that's what we did. This is the at work use case, in my opinion, is that one at the top. Do you want to be able to log people in from any tenant? This is useful for federated scenarios. Maybe you have an application that you're going to want to support your client's tenant. Do you want to basically allow anybody from any tenant and also personal accounts? We have explored this scenario before. It has its use cases, no doubt. But at the same time, the user group app that we've been working on, this is meant for internet consumption. We are going to have someone, it could be you, who lives in the Philadelphia area, the greater Philadelphia area, and says, I want to RSVP for a Philly.net meeting. And so we just want to know some token about who you are so we can add you to the list. It's not really for any other purposes, certainly not planning to spam anybody or anything. So one way to do that is, hey, just, you know what? You don't need another username and password with us. Why don't you use a Microsoft account? So I'm going to set this app registration for personal Microsoft accounts only. And I'm going to click register. And then what happens is you get stuff that I believe is still kind of okay. I'm not going to use this registration because one of the things you have to do is use the client ID. Now, is this client ID sensitive? Might be a question you're asking, because I did not have Azure Mask on. I went ahead and showed this off. Is this sensitive? Well, it's not a client secret. So it's not an ability for an application to modify contents of the users or anything like that. And you can't do that against personal accounts anyway. At least I can't make an app registration that allows that. So because the user would have to grant those rights, first of all, and I would have to ask for those rights, and I'm not doing that. So there's no client secret that could allow somebody to modify my tenant. But the nice thing about this path, signing in personal MSAs, is you don't need more than that client ID. You don't need more than it. And it's because you are going to be delegated the authority by the user themselves to read their profile. So you need the user's consent. It's going to be that typical OpenID Connect path that you've probably seen a ton of times with with all kinds of apps all over the web, where it says like, hey, sign in with your Twitter account, sign in with your Facebook account, sign in with your Microsoft account. And it sends you off somewhere to say, do you want to let this application have access to your account? And you say, and by the way, here's what we're going to give them access to. And you say, okay. And then there you go. You don't have to remember username and password. That's what this path is. All right. So let me pull this off screen. If I were to refresh this, I didn't actually end up finishing that. Oh yeah, I did. So if I were to refresh this, then we should now see, I thought we would see it. We do not see my new application because this only shows owned applications. So to make it an owned application, I'd have to apply an owner, right? No owners have been assigned. I can go ahead and assign myself. I know I'm really zoomed in here on this one. And so that's assigned. And now let me come back. Let me try refreshing that one more time. I just want to see if our newly, have I not, did I need to save something? Let me double check. Okay, I think I did need to save something. So let me refresh these one more time. Still not coming up. Okay, but I believe it's now technically an owned application. I believe that's true. I don't want to get too hung up on this because it's not that important. it's not that important. But yeah, it is in my list here as an owned application. I think we might be getting Rich back here.
I think I'm back. You hear me?
I hear you anyways. So here it is. I had to be a little patient. You can see this is the applicant registration I just created 8.1. I'm going to go ahead, for the sake of the demo, and because it's already 8.23, I'm going to go ahead and use the one that I've already set up. I don't think I've missed anything, but I just want to keep moving. Now, I struggled getting this to work, Rich.
Okay.
Using the project template, because I naturally said, oh, I want Microsoft Graph permissions because I'm going to want to read the user's profile. So I checked this box. When I checked this box, the application that was created doesn't compile. And I'm not quite yet sure what it's missing, but it seems to be missing something related to Graph. It could just be missing a Graph reference. That could be it. But in order to keep moving and sign people in, I tried it again, leaving this off. And it says, I'm going to make these changes for you.
Okay.
And it turns out that off screen, it is actually asking me to sign into my Azure account. And just so people have a clear understanding, yes, it is asking me to do this multiple times. So when that happens to you, don't get frustrated. Just keep on signing in. When this is done, I'll show you how many of these tabs I ended up with. So there it is, all those different tabs. I'm not 100% sure what's going on there, but what it's really doing is it's installing some things, and it's installing some NuGet packages. It's using the .NET MS Identity tool. It's updating the project. It modified some code. It did a bunch of stuff, and then we get a new project template that doesn't actually have a whole lot. It's using MSAL authentication, this extension method, to use the MSAL library. Now, the MSAL library, just for folks that don't know, is the Microsoft Authentication library, and there are multiple Microsoft Authentication libraries. This happens to be the Microsoft Authentication library for .NET. But the Azure AD team has, or at least it's in the Azure AD GitHub. They have authentication libraries for JavaScript, for Node. I think there might be one for Go. I think there's one for Python, I'm pretty sure. So this is basically, hey, we're .NET developers, so it's bringing in the MSAL library for .NET, right?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. It binds it to some Azure AD configuration. And you're like, well, where did it put that config? Because this is a Blazor WebAssembly Standalone App, it puts it in an app settings that's in your www root. That means this has to ship into your web server's www root. That does not mean that it's going down to your customer, to your client.
Okay.
But it does mean that if you're going to use app settings with Blazor WebAssembly Standalone, the app settings file is not where you're used to if you've never done it before. Because I remember we said, like, where would it be? It's here in www root. I would go one step further and say, this is not the way to do this in production. Use a different .NET configuration method, whether it's environment variables. That's probably the best one. I'm just going to say right out. You ask me, I think it's the best one. But if you're using something like a static Azure Static Web Apps, Azure Static Web Apps has its own way, which might be environment variables. I just don't remember, and I don't want to go look it up while we're sitting here trying to get through this. To basically say, hey, here are the configuration properties, and then when I run the app, they're going to get injected in, and .NET will have what it needs. It needs an Azure AD client ID, an authority, and then there's a third one, validate authority true, that seems to be always set. I've never tried setting that to false and see what happens. I've just never tried, so I don't know. Now, there's a little bit of an issue with this. If you tried using this as is, this is not going to work. It is going to try to sign in to your tenant, to your Azure tenant. That happens to be the name of my Azure tenant. Or it's not the ID, it's not the GUID, but it is the name of the tenant. And for personal accounts, this is not correct. For personal accounts, you need this to be consumers. So that's a little piece of the template that if a personal account is chosen, does the template know? Is it something that could be updated? I'm not sure, but I certainly want to look into it. And what I'd like to do is look into how this works in .NET 10, because we have the .NET 10 preview and we have Visual Studio preview for it. So like that all exists out there for us to look at. I'm wondering if it's kind of still there. And I just don't know. I don't know the answer to that. So let me save that. What is really happening here? Well, what's happening is all we've done simply is tell the WebAssembly app to use MSAL authentication, but there's been a few more behind the scenes changes that you may or may not be aware of. One of them is that if I go to nav, is it nav menu and main layout? Yeah, it's not going to be main layout. It's the nav. I thought it was in main layout. Yes, actually, it kind of is in main layout. It kind of is. So what is this? This little bit right here in main layout.razor that comes in the template, that is the top row where you normally see like about, and then you see login. Well, this component right here, the login display component, manages whether you see a login link or a logout link, basically. Okay. And here's the component. The component is using authorized view. We've dealt with authorized view before on this show. It is a component in Blazor that allows you to show content when you're logged in and to show content when you're not logged in. So it's useful. Okay. Let's cut to it. What have I done? So far, I have created an app registration. Then I said, okay, well, let's go ahead and let the project template create this for us. But I think what we're going to find is it's really not so much code that we can't bring this over to our application on our own. We get a Blazor hello world. And again, don't forget, just in case you're joining late or you're watching in the future, these are personal Microsoft accounts. So this is not going to sign in your work account. It's not going to sign in your customers' work accounts from their tenant. That is not what this is for. I've got a login link in the corner. And just because folks can see, I happen to be using Edge, although all the browsers have this, where you are logged into a profile. And this profile, this is what I use every day. So it is my personal MSA. I click login and I get this. It didn't even bother. It didn't even bother, right? I got a little pop-up that was there to let me pick my Microsoft account, but it's like, you're already logged in. You're already logged in. So here you go. Returned it. Oh, OpenID Connect just returned it. Boom, it's done. Let's so that's not super exciting because some of the things are like, okay, great. You're signed in, but wow, what else? Like what else do you need for this? I would say what's cool about it is that we're going to look at the code needed and say, this really isn't that much code. We should be able to use this in our own application, which I think will be a future show where we move it in, right? Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, I think that's a plan. And I think so just to kind of recap here, you did the file new project, you selected authentication, you selected the Microsoft identity for that authentication, right. Unchecked the Graph API, and got essentially a working application that, unfortunately, from the configuration side, was pointed to an actual tenant, as opposed to what we wanted, even though we didn't really have an option to say it's what we wanted. We wanted the consumer side of it. So just by swapping out that URL, we're able to now start using your Microsoft accounts or your personal consumer accounts. Yeah, anybody's personal accounts. If this was up on the web right now, anybody watching could log in with their personal account. Now, what's the value of this? And we're going to add some code to this to show in a more direct way what the value is going to be. Is the website could call an API to essentially register you and say, hey, we now know when this person comes back, we know who they are. We can link them up with the meetings that they've RSVP'd to. They could maybe leave a comment. I don't know. Maybe they could leave a rating. Like, these are features that are unimplemented, but we've got what we need to get that started.
what I would like to do in the future is to support maybe a couple other external account types. And that I think would be useful for a lot of people too. But when we say like, what is the code? Well, the code is add MSAL authentication. Like this is it. But that means we need the MSAL library. So let me go ahead and open the project file just to show that this got added. The Microsoft Authentication.webassembly.msal library got added. So we are going to see that we'll be adding that ourselves to our app at some point in the future. Once you do that, there is another tricky little bit that could confuse you, because it has for me, is that in the MSAL library is primarily for client-side use cases. You know what? Let me take the word primarily out of there. It supports client-side use cases. It supports more than just client-side use cases. But this is a library you will reach for if you're building an app that wants to connect to these things, and you're using JavaScript, you're using some other libraries that they support. Well, you got to get some JavaScript code into your app client side. So this line of code you're not going to find in the Blazor WebAssembly template just right off the jump, right? You're just not going to see it. In fact, right. I'm going to let the Orbital app load here just to show this is our user group app in progress. And when I go to the website, which is here, and I go to Program CS, we don't have that MSAL library in here. Like we're not referring to it all. We're going to see that the project file doesn't have it. We don't have it in there yet. And we don't have this index HTML. Like it's just the Blazor WebAssembly bootstrapper is there, but not the MSAL library. So those are 3 places we have to update. And then you have to start using, well, the easiest way is to start using the authorized view component and the authorized and not authorized sections of that component. That's the easiest way to deal with this. You will probably have this in your application to the point that you might just want to drop it into your, imports file and be done with it. Let me see if it's in here so it's not, right? Microsoft ASP.NET Core Components WebAssembly Authentication is not here. So as you go along, you might say like, oh, I'm tired of adding this everywhere. Or you might be the kind of person that likes having it where it's needed, and move on from that. So any questions before we go a little bit further?
No, I think we're good. The only question, and it's kind of not related, and so I don't want to detour from that, so we'll just move on. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, because the show is an hour, this was kind of the quick way to get started, but I didn't want to leave us without saying what did it really do.
Right.
So what it really did was add this configuration in, but we want to make use of this stuff. We want it to be useful for us. So I am getting some notes up here off screen where I've got a million windows going. So let me just see if this shouldn't be too hard to find, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and why you're ranging and looking for that. I think what we're trying to do is kind of take that next step, right? We have somebody's name there that we got from the authentication side of things. So what other information can we maybe have or start to bring back to make that user experience better and more personalized that part of the page?
Right. Now, let me see what I want to do next is, oh, go ahead. Did you have something?
I was going to filibuster while you're doing that. So welcome, Alan. Thank you for joining us. Great to have you here as well as we start heading down this authentication path in general, not necessarily the Orbital app, but we'll get there eventually. But
yeah, so what I want to do now is I want to see if I can get information about this user in a way that that'll allow us to kind of jump ahead and say, okay, now that we know who they are, we could save this to a database or something. So when we did Blazor Web App, we used some different services here. There was a service that's basically it's a whole different NuGet package and everything where you say add Microsoft account. But
right.
I believe that that's going to work in Blazor Web App. I don't know that that would work in Blazor Standalone. So I started dotting in to say like, well, this particular library doesn't have the concept of events that that external identity package does, where we could hop onto the on creating ticket event where it's creating the server side authentication and logging in that way. We could hop into that event and we could say, well, you've already gone and grabbed user information. Can you just kind of show me what it is, right? Can you
Right.
share that with me? Well, we're in Blazor WebAssembly Standalone. So we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to say, okay, that's interesting that it's trying to guess what I want to do next, and it's really not that far off. One of the things that I can do is I can say, this provider has options, the provider being the MSAL authentication library, and I want to change the default access token scopes that I ask for. And I want to add that one right there. That's exactly it, because we are going to ask to obtain the scope for reading out of your profile, reading, not writing, from Microsoft Graph. So
a scope is basically akin to a permission, right? So
right.
This is the boundary, or we think of scoping variables, the boundedness of what I can ask for from the graph.
Yep. Nope, that's exactly it. So I'm just double checking real quick. I want to make sure. Yep. So how does this stuff work? Well, when you click on login in the login display component, it doesn't really do it. This sort of feels kind of magical to me in terms of that it says, well, I'm just going to call authentication login in the app. So you say, well, what is that doing? So you say, okay, well, where is authentication login going? It turns out that it's going to this authentication.razor page.
Okay.
And they use the page directive in order to intercept that call. And they say, okay, you asked for the login your URL includes login in here. We're going to capture that as an action. That's just like in a way you could think of that as like a variable. And then, I mean, it is a variable, as we can see. And then we're just going to use this component called the remote authenticator view component. And look at what this thing, it's a mouthful. It uses remote authentication state as the state to be persisted across authentication options. You can supply actions. And if you supply the login action, then it just goes out and does it, which is, boy, I can't wait to dig in and find out what that's doing. So if we get that graph permission, we still need an HTTP client that we are going to make the graph call with.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I am going to add a scoped service. And boy, I love how it's trying. It might figure it out as we do this. What did I do wrong here? Oh, I see what I did wrong.
Don't you need that in parentheses?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I did wrong. And we're going to say that we're going to take advantage of a service called the authorization message handler service. Yep, that's the one.
Okay.
That's the one. And let's see. I want to configure it. The authorized URL is not quite correct, but in the scope, I don't actually know, might be correct, but since my notes have something different, I'm going to stick with my notes in the interest of time.
Okay.
So we want the authorized URL is whenever you're going to graph Microsoft.com v1.0. And you know, that scope might be fine, but I'm going to use this because it's what I used when I got this working.
Yeah.
We could investigate that. So
and that
yeah,
typically matches. So when you set the permissions of the API permissions that your app registration has, that right there, user.read is what you're requesting, right? There's user.write, there's user.read all, which is not just your account, but all of the accounts in there, be able to read those. So that definition that you've got in there will match to what would reside in the token and what you've requested by going to the app registration. So if you, in theory then, if you request a scope that your app registration doesn't give you permission for, you're probably going to get, you know, some kind of a denied permission. Not that you're not an authenticated person, but that you're not authorized to ask for that scope that you're asking for.
Okay. I figured out what I wanted to do here.
I talked long enough.
Yeah. I want to get back the service.
Sure.
I don't just want to modify it. I want that service back. So okay, so here we go. There's still some more stuff to work out. So I want SP required service to return the service to me. And that returns well, let's see. What am I getting back? I'm getting back an authorization message handler is what I'm getting back. But then we want to configure that handler. So authorization message handler, we're going to configure it.
Yep.
So just like that, we're going to configure it. But we are going to, and I'm going to be totally honest, I have not yet dug into, I think what we're doing is we are replacing the built-in client handler in an HTTP client with our own. Okay. And that we're replacing it with this service that we created. This is a handler that attaches an access token to the outgoing requests. So what happens is, in fact, this IntelliSense says it all. This is a delegating handler that attaches access tokens to outgoing HTTP response message instances. This is basically a handler that's going to drop in that authorization and supply the token that if you've done this manually using either like Postman or the .http support or anything like that, if you do this manually, then this is like grabbing the access token and it's dropping it in there on every request. But that second line in the IntelliSense, access tokens will only be added when the request URI is within one of the base addresses that you configure. So what we're doing is we are saying, I want an HTTP client that if you call graphmicrosoft.com v10, then I will add the authorization token required from the user in order to call this. I'm going to delegate that call. And, oh, by the way, we'll request this scope.
Right.
So I don't need it to be this. I need to say that we are now basically saying that what this line of code does, and there are many ways to do this, we could use a keyed HTTP service. We could use a named HTTP client. We could do a lot of things. We are now saying when somebody requests an HTTP client in this application, and then furthermore, they are calling, then yes, you're going to get an HTTP client. But if you are calling graph.microsoft.com v10, furthermore, we're going to set you up so that your client can log in. Like it's just going to work. Okay, so now that I've done that, that was a little bit of a mouthful. But now that I have done that, I should be able to go here and we should be able to say, we should be able to have an authorized. I'm going to leave this stuff here. I'm going to leave this stuff alone. And let's have an authorized view. I need an authorized view. And let's have an, I can live with that. I can live with this. Okay. So they say authorized and not authorized. This is fine. I can live with that. So I actually don't really care. And I don't care about this. That's just the difference between being logged in and not being logged in. That's all. Okay. What I think is interesting is that it's going to try to use the user identity. I do not think this is going to work, but I could be wrong. It's not important because we're going to call the graph anyway.
Okay.
Hopefully in the next 10 minutes. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Okay. So I'm not logged in. Fine. Now I'll click login. And, oh, you know what? Look at that. Our context.user.identity did work. I don't know why I had such little faith. And it's just pulling the name out of my identity. So what does that mean? That means that when the MSAL library logged us in, it also went ahead and established it as the user's identity. This is traditionally how you might pick up claims principles and everything in ASP.NET Core. But I want to make a graph call. So what I'm going to do is let's I don't know that I want this to be an on-initialized async, but this is going to be an interesting thought about where do we really want this code to be. Oh, you know what we really want? We want this to be in a component. That's what we want. That's what we really want, isn't it? So that way, if you're authorized, we'll do this. And if you're not, we won't.
Right.
Okay. So let's, I don't really want it to be here. Should I really make a components folder? If you are a fan of vertical slice architecture, this is probably not how you would go about doing it. So let's say this is the graph info component. Naming is fun. Let's not get hung up on it, especially at this point. Now, this is a totally different component. And what we're going to do is if this component is called, then we are going to fire up a call to the graph, to Microsoft Graph. I keep saying the graph. I don't know why I'm doing that, but we're going to fire up a call to Microsoft Graph, and I am going to paste some code in here to get this going. Okay. And I'm going to need some things to make this work. For example, what the heck is HTTP? Like, that's what it's saying. So we're going to have to inject the HTTP client that we set up earlier. It's also complaining, I don't know what Graph API response is. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense. We're going to need to declare a Graph API response, which is just a JSON document. And then it's going to be like, well, wait a second. What do you mean JSON document? I think this will be simple. I think this is just going to be adding system.text.json. Yep. So that got added. It doesn't know what access token response is. Let's see. I think this is a simple one too. Yep. Yep. That is correct. At least I think it's correct. Why are you complaining here? Are you complaining? Oh, probably because I don't have this completed. I don't have this code working. All right. Is that it? Yeah. Sorry. All the squigglies was just, isn't it fun? Isn't that awesome that all of them were based on a missing curly brace. So, okay. What this does, what this code does is it goes ahead and says, let me try to call Microsoft Graph. And if I'm successful getting information about the logged in user, then let's just save it. Let's just save that information. And that's it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have up here a authorized section. So let's use authorized view here as well. And we are only going to do something if you're authorized. We're not going to worry about if you're not. And actually, I wonder, ironically, if it's doing what I want to do, but I'm not. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of copy what I already have. If Graph API response is null, we leave it as null unless we call, right, and complete the call. Then before rendering the page, the component was able to make a call to graph code, and what do you get back? We serialize out the response, and that's it. That's it. So I think this is good, and I think I can take this graph info component and add it here. I spelled it wrong. Boy, I am all over the place. Graph info. Okay. And if this is intended to be a component, yep, we're going to need the namespace for it, which, do you know it? Do you know it, please? Yes. Awesome. Thank you. Great. And this is only purely because we put it in the folder. And so by convention, putting it in that folder, by convention, Blazor components are going to have a namespace that's walled off with components. Right. We'll revisit that in our app, how we want to do this. Now, boy, wouldn't it be wonderful if this all worked? Yeah, go ahead.
Why the graph? So the graph info is wrapped inside of an authorization tag.
Yep.
So is the component that you're putting it into.
Yep.
So it's kind of doubly nested to be authorized. Is that gonna?
I don't know. Cannot turn token from cache. Force parameter claims have been requested. There is no cached access token, or it is expired. Okay, awesome. So that, but the funny thing about it is that, okay, there's some interesting work to do there for that exception not to come up. But I got the result I wanted, so I'm sorry that I might be leaving people saying like, wait a second, why did that exception? But this is the result I wanted. The Graph API did call and get this information. That's good. I think that what we would do is we would register this person based on the ID. And then when they come back, we can identify them. And we would just say like, oh, 1B875 is back. Awesome. We know how to email them. And we know what they've, and our data, our app's data is what did they sign up for? They've signed up for this meeting. Here's a rating that they gave. Maybe they want to modify the rating. All the things that we're going to have the user group app do. But I wanted to render this out to show that here's now going back to Graph to get the information we need in order to save and interact with this user, right?
Right.
But you can see, and this is what happens when we do stuff completely live, is I have some problem, I think. Maybe I don't. I'm going to try running it from the beginning. And let's log in. And it's actually asking me to sign into my account. So I really and truly did log out of it. And I'm going to do this off screen. I do not actually use my password. It goes to my Authenticator app, which I strongly recommend everybody finds a non-password way to manage your Microsoft account, or probably any of your external accounts at this point. Yeah, and definitely. Yeah, see, this is going to come back. This is going to pop up on me again, right? Refresh required. Now it's kind of trying to tell me what may be wrong. Force refresh parameter is set to true. Claims have been requested. There's no cache access token. So I think we might be able to deal with this. But the funny thing is, if I just continue through it, we get to this. We get to the answer we want.
Real quick, because we're almost at, is there any thought that this might be because it's WebAssembly?
Well, so no. And here's why. And I actually think that this is important because I think for our viewers, I think you should know that there's a sample that you can use that implements all of this, but it implements it. So the learning piece is tearing it apart, right? Like, to me, that's That's kind of
Right.
the learning of how does something work. And I'm going to go to GitHub and get that for us. Yeah, I think this is it here. It's in Azure Samples. And it's not that one. But it is.
Probably want the one down for the repositories, right? There you go. Sorry, your mouse up top.
MS Identity docs code.net is what it is. So you know what? Why don't I add docs? Did I see it? Yeah.
No, I saw the JavaScript one.
So this sample, this one right here, spa-blazor.wasm, which we're going to have to get. We're definitely going to have to make sure we get that into show notes. But this sample right here, what does this sample do? You open it up, it's going to look awfully familiar. This is the code I added, right?
Yeah.
And furthermore, but here's why I didn't just use the sample straight out. First of all, I wanted to show like, look, we can add this to an existing app. But second, I don't want www root. I want pages. I want pages index. When you run this sample, they took index.razor and they put the graph call in onInitialized async. So it's in essence what this does. This is an auto login. Because in order to call graph, that's calling graph is going to trigger that HTTP client that we set up, which is going to say, oh, I gotta go get access tokens, and it's just going to trigger the whole process. And we don't want it to be auto triggered. We're going to want login with Microsoft, login with Google. Like that's what we're going to want. So you can see that I've got some thinking to do into how do we get this in there? How do we get this in there so that it doesn't, blow up on us essentially, and throw an exception in the graph? I think we can figure that out, because it could be that I just missed something in implementing here. I don't know for sure though. We'll have to look.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but it's important. Yeah, I definitely got to get going. But I think what's important was to note that this sample is where that second half was inspired by.
Yeah.
And furthermore, the next question that people might have is, well, that's cool that you went and grabbed all that user information. It's going to be useful. But what's missing out of this? It's our favorite thing to talk about. What's missing? The profile picture.
Right.
And we can do that with a graph call to get the profile picture. We can put that. And so that's what we're going to work on. That's what we're going to work on next time, right? Or maybe not next time, but in a future show. So hopefully this helped. Oh, look, I got to get this back to here. Yeah, the talking one got messed up in a way. There we go.
There we are. All back together. Cool. No, this is good. This gives a really good deep dive into how we do how authentication happens in Blazor WASM. Kind of sets us up for what we want to do to A, get the picture, but B, think about how we move this over into Orbital eventually so that we can start putting authentication and get this out in a place where people can see it and access it.
Yeah, and I think, so if you're looking for a wrap up, like, you can do this. You don't have to use the Visual Studio path that we used. You don't.
Mm-hmm.
I would strongly suggest going to the sample at Azure Samples, and it's the MS Identity docs code.net sample, which once again, for folks watching on YouTube, I'll get that in the show notes a little bit later today. So hopefully by the time you're watching this, it's there. I would recommend let that be the inspiration, and then we've got to tease out how to not make it automatically log people in. But other than that, we're on our way with authentication, and that's going to help us in the user group app going forward.
Definitely. Awesome. Thanks so much for running through that, Chris. That was cool.
Yeah, hopefully it helped everybody. And we'll get everything sorted, and hopefully everybody have a great weekend. I think the plan, what I'm hoping to do is that we can all be back on Monday. Mm-hmm. So until then, for Rich, I'm Chris, and we will see you all next time on the Dev Talk Show.